Hello guys, in this video I wanted to explain the DOP context and how Smoke Solver works by default in Houdini. And currently, if you're familiar with SOPs in Houdini, you know that you have this context that you have, you can manipulate points in it. And you can also manipulate volumes, voxels, and things like that. But when you want to create sims, you have to use the DOP context. And basically, the DOPS is a different context where the data is represented differently. So what happens is you have data coming from SOPs, let's say points. If you're using particles, you have voxels, and you have forces, any other volumes as well. And all of that from SOPs goes into DOPS, okay? And then DOPS creates its own representation of the data, where it has an object, which is basically a placeholder for the data, and then the data gets attached to it. Let's say you have, you're going to create a smoke sim. There is an empty object that gets initialized, and then that empty object will have data attached to it. Let's say we import the density field, for example, in there. And once the data is initialized, it goes through a solver that's gonna integrate the data. So this solver can take any data, any input, and integrate it over time by applying multi-solvers. So you have a multi-solver node that basically takes this input and applies any micro-solver attached to it. And what a micro-solver is, it basically takes the data. If it's a volume, you have a set of micro solvers that you can use. If you have points, you have specific ones that you can use. The micro solver will take that data and process it, do something to it. For example, we can import the density field and run a gas blur to it, and it will keep doing this over and over and over. And so in this example, I'm going to show how to import data in DOPS from SOPs as a smoke object, and then how to attach it to the smoke solver, the default smoke solver. So we're going to import the data, and then we're going to pass it into the smoke solver, and then once we initialize the data, we're going to source something into it. And it's basically adding data. At first you attach an empty placeholder, and then you fill it with data. So you have the incoming, which initializes the placeholders, and then that goes into the solver, and the solver injects the data onto them and runs the micro solver. So let's take a look at a simple smoke sim. I'm going to create a null here. I'm going to call this out density. I'm going to create a DOP network. Okay, I'm going to dive inside. Don't need that. The first thing we need for a smoke sim to work, we need a smoke object. Okay, and this is what basically initializes the data. And let's see, we need to give the domain, this object, enough space to import the data, because this is what will define where the sim is going to happen. Okay, so something like that. We can also control the resolution of the sim. And then we're going to create a smoke solver. And this is one of the Houdini native solvers. And you can see here, this is where you attach the data, and this initializes the solver. And if I hit play now, nothing happens because we're not importing, we're not sourcing anything. And to source data from SOPs, we're going to use a source volume node. So I'm going to create that. And then here we're going to tell it to source smoke, that's what I want, and point to the out density. And now we should see the data imported. And you can see it's already emitting the density over and over and over. And let's hit play. We should see it incrementing. Now the resolution is really low. Let me increase this a little bit. And let me put down a gravity node. And let's take a look. We should see the sim falling. Let me increase the size of the domain so we can see it. Okay, let's hit play. You can see the smoke is going. So great. This is how a basic smoke sim works. Now, inside this guy is where the solver is doing the computation to make this density field behave like a smoke. And if we double click, you can see it's basically built off a lot of nodes. There is this Gus substep node here, and then there's a multi-solver that takes the data, and then it runs all these micro solvers based on various switches, and then sources the data which we have here. So it initializes the data and then run one step and then sources this guy and keep doing that over and over. And in the next video, we're going to create a smoke solver from scratch to understand what's happening inside the smoke solver in the first place, and what are all these micro solvers and how they're working, what their purpose is. And hopefully with this explanation, we'll have a much better and deeper understanding of how Houdini smoke solver or solvers in general works. So we'll do that in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in a bit.